it is possible to serve in politics and have a decent political career without having a lot of money in the bank. And I think Tan Sri Lim Kit Siang is one very good example lah. He's not poor by any stretch of the imagination, but he's somebody who actually doesn't need very much, in order to serve in his capacity as a politician.
Right. So I think one of the notion that people got from this whole thing about like you need to have money to be able to be in politics, part and parcel of it was also the idea that you wouldn't be able to climb up the career ladder in politics if you do not have money. So how true is that then? We rephrase it in that way.
Okay. So that I think is a political necessity for many of the leaders in the Barisan Nasional. That used to be the case. Maybe still is the case more so for BN parties. A little bit of that I think is creeping into the PH parties, but not to the same extent that what we saw in UMNO especially, and to a lesser extent MCA. What do I mean by this? When you want to rise up in the political party ranks, right, you need money to buy influence, or you need to be able to have channels by which you can grow your influence among different groups. So let me illustrate using a more traditional kind of BN politician career path, right? I start off maybe serving at a branch. Later on, I get enough support, I contribute enough, I become the, let's say, division head. And for division head, this is something very important for UMNO. UMNO division heads have to, not just take the leadership position, but they have to make sure that all the people within the division, the key leaders in the division, are taken care of.
Right.
Taking care of means you have to take care of them financially.
Oh.
Meaning, whatever contracts that you get, as a result of you being UMNO division head from the government, you have to subcontract it out to some of the people who are businessmen or contractors within the division itself, right? And you basically use this division head position to try to rise in the party. If you are in an area where UMNO holds the MP seat or one of the ADUN seats, then you can fight for one of those positions, right? For example, in Rembau, Khairi was the deputy division head. He was the MP, and the division head at the time was Tok Mat, who was then the Negeri Sembilan Menteri Besar.
Right.
Right. So because he's the division head, he actually has the right to say that I want to contest in a parliament seat. And this was something that Khairi was not happy about, that he was the seat was taken away from him. But the idea is that once you have that kind of influence in a division, you then try to use it to go up the ranks, either as an ADUN or as an MP.
Right.
And then once you get elected as an MP or ADUN, then your career path would be, as an ADUN, you want to be in the EXCO at the state level, right? And that will be another channel by which you amass more power, more resources. And then at the MP level, you try to aim to be a deputy minister or a minister. Right? And this process, right, is one where, especially within UMNO, you need to make sure that the gravy train is rolling.
Can you elaborate more of that?
Right? I think this is something that people are interested in. Of course, I'm not from UMNO. I don't know the exact details, but hearing from some of my friends who are in the ecosystem, basically what this means is that, if let's say you want to rise up to be EXCO, it means that you have to take care of not just the people below you, you need to take care of the people above you. The people that would determine, especially the president of UMNO, who would become the leaders in the state, who would become the EXCO in the state governments, for example. You have to sort of like you have to continue the gravy train, meaning get contracts, pass on the contracts, pass on money, that is part and parcel of the game that you play. That is actually very, very different from what the public sees. All this stuff happens behind the curtain, so to speak.
Right. Okay.
At every juncture, there are ways in which you can have access to power, which allows you to also extract resources from the public or the private sector.
One question I want to ask as well, because we know that, especially when this creativity is applied to personal gains, right? I understand there's a lot of stories about proxies, right? This person proxy, this person, and proxy basically means you're not going to have a contract, right? And nothing is on paper, lah, put it this way. Thinking about it, I'm very scared. Because if let's say these certain people promise me that you will be my supporter, but it doesn't happen, and nothing is black and white, and you can also just straight away take off with the money, you can earn a lot out of it, and I can be left hanging.
So the way it works is the following. As long as you are in power, the people that are your proxies will remain loyal to you. Because they know that the proxies knows that you can use your power to make life difficult for them. Right. So, for example, Dr. Mahathir was in power for a long time as a prime minister. That time, I think he would have had many proxies, and many academics have written about this. It's not something that is hearsay. I think over time, he himself would have forgotten who his proxies are.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking of myself as well.
So I think probably when the time he left office in 2003. A lot of the proxies would have gotten very rich, and
he also forgot it.
if there's nothing in black and white, they would say that, hey, this is my own hard work, right? And then they would use whatever ways to make sure that wealth remains in their hands, right? And this is where some of the lack of political financing comes into the picture, lah. And this is also related to one of the reasons that has been stated by some people close to the former Prime Minister Najib, that Najib himself didn't really have access to a lot of UMNO's resources, because those resources were held by people close to Mahathir or Daim. Right? That's why he had to go out and form his own patronage network through 1MDB, for example. Right? That allowed him to buy the influence of many of these UMNO warlords. Right? So, this is part and parcel of the larger discussion about the role of money and influence in politics, and how this is part and parcel of, I think, something that you need to deal with and plan for and engage on in your career as a politician.
Right. So now that when we talk about that part, right, generally we can see that in order to rise up the rank, to a certain extent, you have to be able to provide resources, namely financial resources in this case.
Financial resources, positions, through the political resources that you control.
Right.
There are different ways you can play the game.
Yeah, but there's also the other side that you also mentioned, like there are people who actually are able to climb up without being very rich, right? And so if you were to sum it up, right, what do you need to be successful in politics?
Okay, a few things. I think you need to have the resilience to stay in the game for as long as possible.
Can you elaborate further on that?
Meaning, through times when the party is doing well and through times when the party is not doing so well, you have to be able to ride the course.
Okay.
Right. So somebody like Anthony Loke, for example, is a good example. Right. When he was elected as an Adun in Negeri Sembilan, right, he was, I think, one of two Aduns at that time in a state assembly of 36. Right. So imagine 34 versus 2. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the Aduns from the DAP at that time, just before the couple of months, I think, before the 2008 election, he actually jumped ship to join MCA. I think memory doesn't serve, but some, I think that was more or less how it happened. And then Anthony was the only guy there left, right? So imagine the kind of resilience you needed to stay on and to tough it out, right? So resilience and toughing it out through good times and bad is one important characteristic, right? Second one would be not making too many enemies within the party, right? Meaning you have to have enough friends, you have to have enough people who will support you, especially at the more senior level. That will allow you to stay within the party and not be watching out over your back to see whether people will go and chop you, as and when they have the opportunity to do so. And then maybe the third one, I would say you need to have a certain amount of skills that you bring into it, right? So for example, somebody like Ming, he's a very skilled orator, especially in Chinese. So he would be one of those that a lot of the DAP leaders in different parts of the country would invite to be their key speaker. And then people will use that to sell tables for their fundraising dinners. Right. So that would be one skill, the ceramah skill. Although now I would think that is maybe less and less important when you're in government, right? Because you can't, Last time it was very easy to criticize government, but when you're in
It's
government,
harder lah, huh?
it's harder lah, right? Somebody like Tony Phua, for example, brought his organizational skills from the corporate sector, brought his ideas in terms of publicity, and he brings that onto the table. Somebody like Gobind Singh, for example, brings his legal experience and the fact that he can use his background as a lawyer to fight for cases on behalf of DP leaders, other people who have been persecuted by the government, the former government. You have a certain skill set that is can be recognized as something that can be useful to the party, right? So the three things: resilience. Second thing is the friendships or the alliances that you build within the party, and then the third one would be the kind of contribution you can make to the party.
Right. What are some of the other career paths that one can take to kind of have a successful political career? Because
think if, let's say, everyone goes into politics thinking that they are going to be MPs, moving up the chain, moving up the sort of like a food chain, and then becoming, minister, becoming chief minister, becoming Menteri Besar, becoming deputy prime minister, well, then you're not going to have that rejuvenation. You're not going to have a process whereby even the private sector or other parts of the public sector can benefit from your experience when you transition away from elected office, away from frontline politics. Right. So this is something that I think we should encourage more discussions on. Right. I'm glad that somebody like Kyrie and Sharil, they've had found many other opportunities outside frontline politics. Whether or not they want to re-enter politics, that's a separate question. Probably a question that I may have to face later down the road. But more and more of these kinds of options should be put on the table. And the government and political parties themselves should be having this discussion, right? If let's say you are a young person entering into politics, there should be thinking that you should have a possible pathway to transition out of frontline politics or into different career pathways. For some of the older politicians, within the ecosystem, you should think about ways in which you can utilize their skills and efforts after they retire, right? So I think, Dr. Mahathir, he came up with this thing called the Perdana Leadership Foundation, right? To recognize the efforts of different prime ministers. In the US, you have a system whereby each president would have their own presidential library to highlight the causes that they believe in. Jimmy Carter recently passed away. He was the US president before Ronald Reagan. And he established the center and was one of the most successful presidents after he retired in terms of promoting different peace-related initiatives around the world. And also within the US, he started this Habitat for Humanity that built houses in disaster areas. So these are, discussions and also platforms and pathways that we should be openly trying to create for politicians to move out from frontline. So for example, Anwar is not going to be prime minister forever. What is a possible pathway for him to utilize the skills and experiences that and networks that he's collected and accumulated over the years for a post-prime minister career? We should be having that discussion.
I think it's where it gets tricky, right? You mentioned earlier one of the things that gave you this luxury was the fact that you know that you can make a good living despite the fact out of frontline politics, right? And I think this can be rather touchy as well for some people.
Yes.
But I think it's a very necessary conversation, like you say, because if let's say I know that my whole lifeline is just dependent on frontline politics, I'll never let go.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm forced to make certain decisions to remain in power.
So I can honestly share with you the thinking behind the party leaders within my party is that if let's say X, Y, and Z doesn't contest in the next general election, either at MP or the Adun level, he or she will be fine because he or she would have a good pension. And that is actually factually correct, especially those who have been a minister, MP, Adun, state exco, right? There are a few DAP leaders who fit that bill. It's not just about the money. The money part, yes, we all have different pension schemes that we can, depend on. Don't you want to see a pathway whereby the experience of these leaders can be used in other ways, whereby he or she feels that they can still contribute to society in meaningful ways, right? So maybe they can be leaders in certain foundations. Maybe they can be directors in certain boards. These are things that I think the party should be actively trying to discuss. But it's very sensitive because if you bring up these possibilities, then there will be some in the party who will be saying, hey, you want me to retire, is it? Right? Then you have to retire sooner or later. Why not have this discussion out in the open where we can get more ideas and get more public acceptance about these kinds of issues rather than, we're just going to feel somebody else and then you take care of yourself. The best that we can do for you is we just give you a datukship.
All right, so Kian Ming, one question I want to ask you about in a career in politics. A lot of people say that politicians are very good liars and you got to be able to lie in order to do well in it. After going through politics, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think that it is a quality that I've seen demonstrated in some of my colleagues, whether it is on this side or the other side of the bench. And you learn that they say things for political reasons rather than because they truly believe in the things that they are saying. For me personally, I have tried to stick to my own principles as much as possible, which is, I think, the far easier way of doing things because you don't have to worry about what you said to this person versus what you said to another person. You can stick to a consistent script. So consistency is key for me, and I believe that in the things that I advocate and speak on, I don't have a tendency to lie or U-turn on these things.
So at least because when you lie something, you forget your lie, right? That's the worst thing, right?
Yes, that is why, people get stuck in knots because some people refer, you to what you've said in the past.
Right.
And then now suddenly you are changing your tune and then you have to fumble in terms of how you have to justify what you say in the past versus what you're doing now.
Right. So a little bit of follow-up question to that, right? Have you in the whole career being requested to lie on something or to say something that may not actually something that you believe in?
Yeah.
And if that happened, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so it wasn't lying, but it was taking a vote that I didn't believe in. And this is a very technical issue, but we were asked to vote on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, the TPPA. That was, an Obama initiative for a free trade agreement between, countries in the Pacific. And that time, I saw very good reasons to support the TPPA. The Pakatan Harapan as a whole decided to take a position of rejecting the TPPA on what I thought were rather spurious grounds and not very policy relevant grounds. Very populist and unfounded grounds. So I had to vote against it. I actually asked, at the time, I remember asking my leaders, hey, can I be absent for this vote? And they said no. So if there was any vote that I regretted, it was that. And the irony is that, after I became Deputy Minister of MITI, I then had the opportunity to go out to try to advocate for the signing of the TPPA that became the CPTPP. And I tried very hard. The minister at the time did not support that position. But today, Malaysia has ratified the CPTPP. This was done when Azmin Ali was the trade minister. And I do believe that Malaysia is by and large reaping the benefits, or at least not suffering some of the disadvantages that some of the detractors of the CPTPP were promoting. And I'm glad that this Madani government did not go back on the decision of the previous government to ratify the CPTPP.
Another thing, right?